Hey guys, Mr. Bowman here. Today's learning objective is in green and we're learning to factorize double brackets with a coefficient. And we're going to do that via the grouping method. So the first thing I want to note is we've been dealing with quadratics that look a bit like this: x squared plus 5x plus 0. And the key thing I want to emphasize is that x squared, it never had a number in front of it. So for example, 3x squared, 5x squared, negative 2x squared. In these cases, the coefficient, or the number in front, is the coefficient that we're interested in. Number in front, that equals the coefficient. And I should be a bit more specific, number in front of the x squared. And what we're going to do today is we're going to have a look at some examples, two different types, where there is a number in front of that x squared. So the first and easiest type we're going to look at are ones where there is a common factor that we can have a look at. So the first example we want to have a look at, let's have a look at 2x squared plus 10x plus 12. So before we factorize or try to get our double brackets, hopefully you've noticed there's a 2, 10, and 12. Each of these numbers can be divided by 2. So they've got a factor in common. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take that out. I'm going to go 2, and then we're going to go x squared plus 5x plus 6. So I've done a single bracket factorizing. And what I want to emphasize is in the middle left over is just a regular quadratic with an x squared. And we then go through our process. Well, what two numbers add to 5x? Also add to 5 and multiply to 6. And hopefully you're thinking 2 and 3. So when you factorize this, you're going to get to 2x plus 2 and then x plus 3. So you're taking out that common factor before you do anything. And as another example, we've got 3x squared minus 3. And this one here's got two parts. So you're probably thinking it's a difference between two squares. But the first thing you should be noticing is both parts, the x squared and the number at the end, they've both got a 3 in common. So both of those numbers are divisible by 3. So just like we did before, we're going to take out that factor of 3. So it's going to be 3, and then in brackets, x squared minus 1. And that bit in the middle, that was a difference between two squares, one that we can go ahead and factorize pretty easily. So in this case, the square root of x squared is equal to x, and the square root of 1 is equal to 1. So we've got two squares happening there. So that there would be 3x plus 1 and then x minus 1. So identifying that common factor is really important. We can even extend this example a bit more. So let's say we've got x to the power of 3 plus x squared, and then we've got minus 12x as well. And we've been asked to factorize this equation here. So whilst there's no coefficient up front, we actually can identify that every single part of this quadratic, or cubic, because there's x to the power of 3, every single part does have an x which we can take out. So like we took out the 2 up here, like we took out the 3 in the next question, we can take out that x. We're going to have x, and then that'll leave us with x squared plus x, and then minus 12. And inside the bracket, we've got a regular quadratic. We've got to think what numbers multiply to positive 1. Sorry, which ones add to positive 1, because there is an invisible one here, and then multiplies to 12. Hopefully you're thinking 4 and negative 3. And then that means your bracket could be x plus 4, and then x minus 3. So that was just a little way to extend it, that particular trick as well. This is the first portion, and the second part of the video, we're going to focus on the one in the learning objective. We're going to figure out, well, how can we factorize using the grouping method? The equation we're going to look at to start off with is 3x squared minus 14x, and then we're going to have minus 5. So we need to figure out which of them comes into that. And the first thing I want to point out, if you have a look at the 3, the negative 14, and the negative 5, none of those have a common factor. We can't yank anything out like we did in the previous approach. So this time around, we need to think differently. So we're going to start, or the approach I want us to start off with is multiplying the coefficient, 3, by the constant at the end, and that's going to get us to negative 15. And that negative 15 number, that there is going to be the number that we are trying to multiply to, and then the number in the front, so that 14, that's going to be the number that we add to. So we need to think of a number, what adds to negative 14, but multiplies to negative 15. And hopefully you're thinking negative 15 and positive 1. So when they multiply together, you get to negative 15. When we add them together, they get to negative 14. And the trick, what I want us to do is that 14x in the middle is really key here. So we're going to write our working 3x squared, and then I'm going to go minus 15x, which was the first number we identified. We're then going to go plus x, which is the 1x that we identified, and then we're going to go minus 5. And the thing I want to emphasize, negative 15x plus x, that's going to get us to the 14x that we had in the middle of our quadratic. And this is where the groups come into play. So the first two here, well, that there is going to be the first group, group number 1, and the ones down the end, that there is going to be group number 2. And we're going to single bracket factorize each of our two groups. So let's have a look at that first one. So 3x squared minus 15x, they've both got a 3 in common, and they've both got an x in common. So I'm going to take out that 3x. Everything left over is in the middle, so we're going to have an x and then a minus 5. And if you expand that, 3 times x is 3x squared, and then 3 times negative 5 is negative 15x. We're then going to do the same for the second group. Now this one here is a bit easier because there's actually nothing in common. X and negative 5 have nothing in common apart from a 1. So we're going to go 1, x minus 15. And we can do that because 1 times x is the x, and 1 times negative 5 is the negative 5 up there. And the thing I want to point out, you can see that exact same bracket has come up twice. And that's how you know you haven't made any mistakes. So when you do that, I want you to put that bracket out first. So you can see what I've done there, x minus 5, because we've had that bracket come up twice. The leftover portions, 3x and the plus 1, they're going to form the second bracket. And that there would be the factorization, or the factored version of 3x squared minus 14x minus 5. So hopefully that makes sense. And the key trick was splitting up the 14x or negative 14x into two smaller parts. So let's have a look at another question. If we have a look, we've got 4x squared plus 4x plus 1. So again, first thing to note, each of those three parts, there's no common factor. Whilst both of the first two parts have a 4 in it, that last part doesn't have a 4, so we can't do anything about it. So first step, we're going to multiply the coefficient by the constant at the end. So 4 times 1 is equal to 4. So we've now got to think, what two numbers multiply to get negative 4, but add together to get positive 4? So positive 4 and negative 4. Sorry, positive 4 and positive 4, no negatives. And hopefully you're thinking 2 and 2. So that means we're going to split that 4x into two lots of 2x's. So we're going to have a 2x and a 2x. Let's do our working down here. So we've got 4x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 1. And the key thing is that middle portion there, that adds up to the 4x from the original equation. We're then going to look to factorize. So there's our first group and there's our second group. So let's see what they have in common. So the first one, they've got a 2x in common, leaving 2x plus 1. And the second group, again, nothing in common. So we're going to have 2x plus 1. And if you have a look, the same bracket is coming up twice. So that means I haven't made any mistakes. And that's going to be the first bracket, 2x plus 1. And the leftover stuff, 2x plus that 1, is going to be the second bracket. And this time, by chance, they're actually the same bracket, which is an example of a perfect square. So we can simplify that a bit more by doing 2x plus 1 all squared. So what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to pause the video. I'm going to get rid of our blue stuff. And we're going to go through two more quick examples together. Clear that. Our third example we're going to look at, I'm going to make the numbers a bit bigger. So we've got 12x squared minus 5x. And then we're going to go minus 2 from that. First thing to notice, no common factors. That means we can't use that common factor method that we did first up. That means we're stuck with our grouping method. So we got 12 times -2. That's going to get us to -24. So that is the number that two digits need to multiply to. And we've got the -5 here, and they must add together to get that. So off the top of my head, I'm thinking it's probably got something to do with 8 and 3, because the difference of those is 5. And if we have -8 and +3, those two would multiply to -24 and add to +5. So that means we're going to split our 5x up to -8x and +3x. So let's jump into that. So we're going to have 12x squared minus 8x plus 3x minus 2. We've then got our two groups, our first group and our second group. And at this point, I should make a note, those two in the middle, it doesn't matter which way around you get them, you will get to the same answer. Let's factorize those parts there. So we're going to have 4x, they both got a 4x in common, and then that's going to leave us with 3x minus 2. And the second portion here, again, it's one of those ones, there's only a 1 in common, so we're going to go plus 1, and that will be 3x minus 2 as well. And again, same brackets come up twice, which means we haven't made any silly mistakes. So that's going to be 3x minus 2. And then the leftover bits, 4x and the 1, are going to form that second bracket. Okay, we're now just going to do one question, and then we'll be able to finish off this video. Last question, it is going to be a tricky one. So we've got 15x squared plus 14x, and then minus 8. So first thing, no common factors, which means we've got to use the grouping method, and we've got to figure out, well, what is 15 times minus 8? That's going to be -120. So we're looking to find out, well, what numbers what numbers multiply to -120, but add together to get +14. And this will be a tricky one, so you do got to think about all your combinations. But the one that I have in mind is 6 and 20, because 6 times 20 is 120, and they've got a difference of 14. And then that means if we got +20, -6, they will multiply to -120, and they will add the +14. So that's going to be my split. So we've got 15x squared. We're going to have plus 20x minus 6x minus 8. And there is a bit of a trick to this one as well. We've then got to factorize the first group and then the second group. So 15 and 20 have a 5 in common. They've both got an x in common too. What's left over? A 3 and an x. And then we've got plus 4 as well. We're then going to factorize the second portion. This time around there is a factor in common, and it's going to be a 2. So I'm going to write minus 2. And then what's left over? 3x minus 4. And what I've done here is I've done an intentional mistake to highlight something. A lot of us are probably like, oh yeah, Mr. Bowman looks all good. But if you go back and multiply -2 and -4 together, that's going to get us to +8. And that is not what we've got. So we've actually factorized wrong. So that there should be a +4, because -2 and +4 get us to -8. And the other thing that would have got you to that, if you have a look at your brackets, they're not quite the same. So our brackets need to be the exact same. You would have noticed, well, it's only a little different. So you should be checking your factorizing and your negatives when you do that. So let's change that to the plus sign, which it should be. Same bracket has come up twice now, which I'm a big fan of. That's going to be 3x plus 4. The leftovers, 5x and the minus 2, are going to form part of that second bracket. So guys, this was a pretty long video, but hopefully you found it useful. We did heaps and heaps of practice of the grouping method within our factorizing. Now, it's really important, get your notes down, understand the process, and then let's get into heaps and heaps of practice.